So good morning, everybody, and thank you all for joining us this morning for our DEI talk. It's time to have the talk, the DEI talk. My name is Tristan Murray. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair for the Seminole County Council PTA, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Can everybody see my screen? Are there any issues there? Yep, looks like. All right. If you have any questions, by all means, just unmute and ask your question. You know, that's fine by me. Kind of hard to see the chat box at the same time, so I'll go ahead and get started.
I am not black. I mean, that's what the world calls me, but it's not me. I didn't come out of my mother's womb saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm black." No, I was taught to be black, and you were taught to call me that, along with whatever you call yourself. It's just a label. See, from birth, the world force feeds us these labels, and eventually we all swallow them. We digest and accept the labels, never ever doubting them. But there's one problem. Labels are not you, and labels are not me. Labels are just labels. But who we truly are is not skin deep. See, when I drive my car, no one would ever confuse the car for me. Well, when I drive my body, why do you confuse me for my body? It's my body. Get it? Not me. Let me break it down. See, our bodies are just cars that we operate and drive around. The dealership we call society decided to label mine the Black edition, yours the Irish or White edition. And with no money down, 0% APR, and no test drive, we were forced to own these cars for the rest of our lives. Forgive me, but I fail to see the logic or pride in defining myself or judging another by the cars we drive. Because who we truly are is found inside. Listen, I'm not here to tell you how science has concluded that genetically we're all mixed and race in the human species doesn't exist, or how every historian knows that race was invented in the 15th century to divide people from each other and it has worked perfectly. No, I'm not here to lecture. I just want to ask one question. Who would you be if the world never gave you a label? Never gave you a box to check? Would you be white, Black, Mexican, Asian, Native American, Middle Eastern, Indian? No, we would be one. We would be together. No longer living in the era of calling human beings black people or white people. These labels that will forever blind us from seeing a person for who they are, but instead seeing them through the judgmental, prejudicial, artificial filters of who we think they are. And when you let an artificial label define yourself, then my friend, you have chosen smallness over greatness and minimized yourself, confined and divided yourself from others. And it is an undeniable fact that where there is division, there will be conflict, and conflict starts wars. Therefore, every war has started over labels. It's always us versus them. So the answer to war, racism, sexism, and every other ism is so simple that every politician has missed it. It's the labels. We must rip them off. Isn't it funny how no baby is born racist, yet every baby cries when they hear the cries of another, no matter the gender, culture, or color, proving that deep down we were meant to connect and care for each other. That is our mission, and that is not my opinion. That is the truth in a world that has sold us fiction. Please listen, labels only distort our vision, which is why half of those watching this will dismiss it or feel resistance and conflicted. But just remember, so did the caterpillar before it broke through its shell and became the magnificent butterfly. Well, these labels are our shells, and we must do the same thing so we can finally spread our wings. Human beings were not meant to be slapped with labels like groceries and supermarkets. DNA cannot be regulated by the FDA. We were meant to be free, and only until we remove them all and stop living and thinking so small will we be free to see ourselves and each other for who we truly are. So what can we do in the face
All right. Um, some of you, I did post a link to the video in the comments if you would like to have it for yourself. I see a couple tears in the audience. I'm glad we were able to connect with the video. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of it. So what exactly is DEI? So we're going to go ahead and start by defining it because in order to understand it, we must actually break it down first. So we're going to start with diversity, a range of different things that the state of being diverse and variety. Pretty simple. Simply put, let's say we're being invited to the dance. Equity, the quality of being fair and impartial. So a lot of times people confuse equity with equality. And later on in the presentation, we'll get into that to actually illustrate the difference between those two things. But just understand that although those words kind of sound the same, they're actually not the same, but we'll get back to that. And then inclusion, the act or state of including or being included within a group or structure. Simply put again, being asked to dance. So you can be, or you can have diversity, but without inclusion, it's not the same. Just having people there without having them actually feeling included and being welcomed, it's kind of a moot point. This, the last part in all red, says education, engagement, and empowerment. Thanks to Shelley, I had the opportunity to meet with someone. Her name was Minnie. She is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Shelley. She is the DEI fellow for Florida PTA or National PTA?
National.
National. Okay. And myself and Shelley had a very great conversation. And in that conversation, she kind of broke down her belief as to where our schools, our PTAs, fall into three categories. Those three categories is education, engagement, and empowerment. Now, in order to get a better understanding of that, you're going to have to go to my class. Sorry, but that's just kind of a little teaser there. In the class that I'll be teaching later on today, there's also some resources, some handouts, and a little bit more in depth as to what that actually means and how do you move from one step to the next. So another shameless plug. I do that all the time. Shelley and Rachel get so mad at me, but hey, here we are. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the Florida PTA or National PTA, PTA in general. So in 1897, the National Parent-Teacher Association was founded. In 1927, the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers was founded. Fast forward in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. For those of you that understand what that is, or maybe you do or you don't recall, that's a landmark case in where I believe it's Oliver Brown filed a class action suit against the Board of Education because he felt that the education that people of color were receiving was not the same, because the law at that time had the phrase separate but equal, but in reality it wasn't. So 10 years later, in 1964, the Civil Rights Law making discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, creed, orientation was enacted, making it illegal. And then in 1970, the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers and the National PTA became one. I put this in here because it's important to understand, in order for us to understand where it is we need to go as a group, as a community, as people, we first have to understand where we've been. The dates that are in here are significant because when you're looking at them, like for instance, if you're looking at the time between the ruling for the Board of Education or Brown versus Board of Education until the joining of the two different groups, it was only 6 years. But when you look at it as a whole and think about where it started to where it is, 6 years is a very long time. And the reason I pose this is to ask, how do we change that? How do we change the diversity? How do we change the equity? How do we change the inclusion and not make it take 6 years for the wheels of change to continue moving? So now we're going to talk about what diversity is in your PTA. When you look at your PTA, when you look at your board, when you look at your members, does that accurately represents your student body? And if it doesn't, you got to ask yourself, well, how do you get that accurate representation? Because everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different level of understanding, and they bring something new to the table. And, just a quick little caveat here. We did, last week, we did our student representative interviews. And I said this time and time again, that it is important for us as a PTA if you're a PTSA, to have the student voice, because we as PTA are here to advocate. We are here to recognize, we're here to encourage, and we're here to support our students. But as parents, as teachers, as community members, we're taking a guess at what we think they need and what we think is best for them. But without having their actual voice, it's just a guess, and we're hoping that we're right. So the same thing applies with the diversity within your boards and within your membership. You want to make sure that you are accurately representing everyone so that everyone has a voice. How do you address diversity in the PTA? That again, so there's a couple of things in here I put in here as a plug to get you to come to my class, and this is one of them, because it's very important to address the diversity, but it's one of those things where sometimes it makes people a little bit uneasy, a little bit uncomfortable, but the conversation has to happen at some point, and we have to be willing, able, and appropriately prepared for the question, for the conversation that is soon to take place. How do I make everyone feel welcome? It's simple. So I'm going to tell you this story. I initially had a different idea planned, right, on how to do this talk. And this idea was kind of stolen from Florida PTA. And it was to do a bit of a skit, so to speak, right? But it was more to focus on the way that most PTAs in general react to a man wanting to join the PTA. Popular misconception. Oh, he's a guy, he can lift tables, he can move furniture, he can do the manual labor and the heavy lifting. And I wanted it to be kind of like a skit or a conversation between the rest of the women in the board and then me being the outsider coming in. And then I had the opportunity to have a conversation with another one of our chairs for our SCC PTA board. And initially, the conversation was to recruit her to be a part of the skit. And 45 minutes later, it was an eye-opening experience for me. Although I thought the skit would have been great, she gave me some feedback on some of the things that she felt. And because of that, I decided to change the entire presentation altogether. Literally, from top to bottom, I changed the entire thing. And then the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure if she decided to join this class that she felt welcome. What she explained to me was the skit that we both watched from Florida PTA, although effective, it made her uncomfortable. And by making any one person uncomfortable, they're no longer feeling welcome. So it was my job, not only as a person, not only as a leader, not only as a DEI chair, but it was my job to make sure that everyone felt welcome. And as effective as I thought it would have been, and as fun as I thought it would have been, that one person not feeling welcome would have made the entire process a moot point. So there's that. And then my favorite response, but wait, we don't have a diversity issue in my school. Well, let's first accept the fact that this isn't an issue, this is a reality. And understanding that we don't have a diversity issue. Okay, you're right, it's not an issue, it is a reality, but do you even know the diversity of your school? And to say we don't have an issue means you haven't even looked into it. And I'm not trying to make anyone feel uncomfortable or calling anybody out, but again, diversity is more than just race, it's more than just gender, it also has to do with learning styles. Something as simple as yet another story for you all. Minnie was giving us a story about an event that they had put together, and it was about snow cones. Everybody loves snow cones. I mean, and the reality is no one would probably ever think of this, but because who's allergic to water, right? No one, and if they are, I've never heard of it, but I don't think anyone can actually be allergic to water. So a snow cone seems like a pretty safe idea. because it's nothing more than water and sugar, right? That's it. But what ended up happening was they put together an event, and apparently there was a little girl who was allergic to food color or food dye. And as a result of that, she couldn't have a snow cone. And she just got a cup of ice. And that to me was eye-opening because, I mean, it's a snow cone. Who would have ever thought? But that in and of itself is diversity. The rest of the school can all have food coloring, but she can't. So what does that mean? That means that we need to either go out and find snow cone flavoring that has no dye in it, or B, find another alternative for her. And that in and of itself is diversity. It doesn't necessarily have to be based off of race or the obvious. It's something that we have to look for to find in order to make sure everybody is included and feeling welcome. So if you say that in that quote, you don't have a diversity issue, I will challenge you to reach out to me, and I guarantee you I'm going to help you find one. I'm going to help you find that one person that is being excluded because you haven't taken the opportunity to look. Next, we're going to talk about equity. What is the difference between equality and equity? So I can just a second here. Equity is typically defined as treating everyone the same and giving everyone access to the same opportunities. Meanwhile, equity refers to proportional representation by race, class, gender, etc. in those same opportunities. So can you have equality and not have equity? Absolutely. Just because you give everybody the same across the board doesn't mean it is equity, because what works for one person may not work for somebody else. But just because I provided you the same tools as I provided the first person, that doesn't make us equitable. Equity means recognizing that power imbalances exist within historical and modern context. In order to understand equity, you must first recognize inequity. And again, to understand where it is you need to go, you have to understand where you first been. And so understanding inequity will help you to understand equity. So how do we define equity within our PTA? This question right here, I actually have a picture that I'm going to show you in just a moment that is going to give you the best illustration of what the difference is between equality and equity and how to achieve that. Can you have equity without diversity? So that is a question I'm posing to the audience. Is it possible to have equity without diversity? Any takers? Listen, I'm from a different age of school where the teacher was calling you and she had no problem calling out names. And right now I can only see six faces. So if somebody doesn't volunteer, I'm just going to pick somebody. Well, sorry, Kim, you're the winner. You happen to pop up right there. And considering you owe me after we did the awards thing, I think you can do this one for me. So, can
you have equity without diversity?
Yes.
No.
Good answer. And my belief and my understanding is this: because equity is born naturally by establishing a diverse and inclusive and equal PTA. So if everybody is the same, there's no equity because you're not comparing one thing to the other and you're not providing that opportunity. So here's my illustration of that. And now if you're looking at this picture, you can see that everybody has a box, but not everybody can see over the fence. So when you're looking at the second one where it shows equity, everyone can see over the fence. So equality and equity, anybody understand or have any questions now after looking at that illustration? All right. And inclusion. So, do you know the members of your PTA? Have you looked at it? Have you taken the time to understand the different ethnic groups, the different educational backgrounds, the different socioeconomic structure, understanding where everyone is. The PTA should be a welcome environment where everyone is heard. And my question is it? You want to reach out and interact and to gain different perspectives and encourage every member to participate. If you plan an event and just one person is not included right now, can we think of every possible scenario? No, but that's the importance of having a diverse board, because everybody's going to bring something different to the table. And every one of them is going to have a different perspective that you may not have yourself. So we can't think of all of them. But if you are, again, if you're planning a particular event, a particular function, and you know for a fact there is one singular person, one student, one family, one person that cannot participate, and they have the desire to participate, then we have to find another way to reach them. We have to find another event or modify our event to be sure to include them. Just like the story that I told about the young, the little girl with the snow cone, and just like the story that I told about how I really wanted to do this skit. And I had it all planned out and worked out, and literally having to redo the whole thing was a challenge, but it was a challenge that I was willing to do, because the last thing I wanted to do was make anyone feel not welcome and not included. Any questions thus far on inclusion? Okay. And so lastly, we're going to go into some resources and information. So here it shows our diversity in our PTA. So remember in the beginning, I asked, do you know the members of your PTA? So I wanted to take an opportunity to show you all the diversity within the Seminole County Council PTA. As you can see, we've got, everyone can see this tab, correct? Nope, hold on, wait, let me go here. All right, everyone can see this tab? I guess so, because Shelly's smiling, so I'm guessing they can. And it was important for me to share this tab, because just scrolling through without even reading the different backgrounds, the different bios of each one of our members, there is a lot to be said about our board. Our board is very inclusive, extremely diverse. We have so many different views, so many different opinions. If you sit through one of our meetings that is planned for, well, I think they're an hour long, they generally go to about 90 minutes and no one ever notices it, because we're exchanging ideas. It is really an open forum. It's welcome for everybody to sit and exchange their ideas and come up with new ones. Case in point, when we did our talent show video, Rachel volunteered me to put this video together, and we all had an idea of what it wanted to look like. And we all sat and talked through it and came up with the final plan. Although I was the one that had to do all the work. And Richard said, well, Tristan, it's up to you. You got to fix it. And I said, well, no, because I want to make sure everybody is able to participate and everybody likes the final product. So there's that. But again, this is what, to me, this is what diversity looks like. This is how you achieve that diversity. Oh, look at that handsome guy. I don't wonder who that guy is. But this is what diversity looks like to me. Okay. We're going to jump back here very quickly. Also in this tab here on this page, I've given a couple links to some resources. So the National PTA DEI Toolkit, this is the actual link. But if you're looking at this and you're watching it as a video, here's the actual breakdown of what that link looks like. So you can write it down there. And then there's this. This is what's called the Department of Education mapping tool. So when we were discussing before, or when it was said that I don't have a diversity issue, okay, well, how do we find that out? Where do we get a way to see what your school looks like? So I also got this link from, I think it was from the Florida PTA training that I attended this past summer, but I want to show you all what this looks like and how you can find the makeup of your school's population. All right. So can everybody see this tab right here? It's kind of loading, it's taking a second, but let's see, it was working yesterday. Are you guys able to see this tab that I just opened? Okay. So this is the Florida Department of Education mapping tool. What it will do is if you go in and put in the school, you put in the distance, it will give you the school grade. It will give you the information. DOE still spinning. Yeah, I see that. Let me try it on a different tab. It will give you the school grade. It will give you the school's, hold on. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Of course, it wouldn't work today. It was working last night when I tried this. There it is. All right, so we'll look here. All right, can everybody see this one now? All right, so we're gonna just go in here and we will select Seminole. Let me. All right, so here it'll show you, like, for instance, the school grades that are all listed over here. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, let's see, we're gonna pick Castleberry Elementary. They have an A. I think it's taking a little bit longer to load because I'm also sharing the tab with you all, but that is a great resource. I don't think it's going to actually load and go through it, but here's the actual link to it. So it's edudata.fldoe.org. But this is a great way, this is a great tool to show you some diversity within your school. Wait, here we go. Now it worked. All right. So when you're looking at it, it shows you the school grade, show you the teacher count, student count. If there's any economically disadvantaged students, it also break down the race and ethnicity for you, gender, students with disabilities, English language learners, and so much other information that it I think is great for you to figure out how do you reach people. Okay, and it usually gives you the breakdown by grade. Okay. And then we're going to go back to our presentation here. Yes, I can repeat the address. It is edu, or actually what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste it over here into the chat box for those of you that want the address. There's the address to the DOE mapping tool.
Hey, Tristan.
Yes.
Since you called out my school specifically, here's what's up a little bit. So I did this over the summer. I looked at our school report card, our county report card. If you've looked at it, you know the inequities that are there. And I actually emailed some of the school board members, got an email from Dr. Cody. But I'm just curious, from a county level perspective, have you looked at, like, especially in reading, the inequities in the scores in our kids' reading abilities? And I know that's more probably a school issue than a PTA issue. I don't know, like how much we actually are able to do, but have you guys talked about addressing any of the inequities or trying to support decreasing those gaps?
So what I will say, I know, so at my school, for those that don't know, I am president of Seminole Elementary, and I also am the chair for the SAC. And I know when we discussed this last year, what we did was we did look at our scores, we did look at our grades and figure out how to bridge that gap. Because we're a Title I school, they have to go through and say, okay, well, this is what we're doing with the funding. And for the folks that are on the SCC PTA board that know me, and then the folks in my school know that I'm very outspoken. And if I see there's an issue, I'm going to say so. My kids have been going to Altamont for the last 3 years now, and I figure the best way to be involved is to get involved. That's how I'm going to understand what's going on in their school. They spend more time at school than they do at home awake with me during the week, so I wanted to know. And so we did break it down and look at their grades and look at how they were going to improve. And they said, okay, well, we think we should spend the money on this. And I said, well, is there a better option? Because this is something that seems like it's going to take a lot longer. Can we try this? And lo and behold, they said, yeah, we can look into it, looked at it, and the pricing was right. And not sure exactly what steps the school took to go in a different direction, but I do know that because of SAC, the same way we do with our boards, they have to present, like, we're going to spend money on this, is this approved, and so on and so forth. And so that's how I actually ended up on PTA. I started on the paperwork side and came over to the fund side, if you would. But that's how I did it specifically for Altamont Elementary. I'm not sure if that was helpful or not, but.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through, actionable ideas and things. I talked with another one of our board members about like a reading club, with one of our dads, to engage the boys and trying to find, more specific things that may pique their interest in and get them interested in reading. Wondering, is it curriculum? Where's the barrier? I guess is just trying to find where's the barrier, and then how do we help as PTA to try to close the gap, I guess.
I know iReady is a great program. My daughter during the, what do you call that, the distance learning, when they first, the COVID-19 hit, her teacher did a lot of iReady and she did a lot of competition. And in the beginning, I won't lie, I did not really understand what the purpose of iReady was for. And then when you see the improvement and you see the grades and you see what it is they're doing, and then you get the actual charts back, it's very much eye-opening. So if your school is using iReady, I would say the PTA can help promote that by figuring out a way to make it some sort of a competition and do something in that regard to help them, help the kids be more interested in utilizing iReady to find a way for them to compete there. My daughter, when I got her report at the end of the year, there was a couple categories that said that they couldn't score her anymore because she just kept reading. And she had hit the ceiling as far as the scoring went. And I remember at first I was like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? So I called the teacher to ask, and she went through it and explained it. She's like, no, she's way ahead of where she needed to be. And her learning curve from when she started to where she is now is great, just because she was interested in the competing of iReady. Every day they did it in school. They got a little sticker on a chart, and then they got what's called store bucks, and that allows them to buy things from the school store. So there's that.
Thank you.
Just to add real quick to what Lindsay said, those things like that, giving us that feedback, honestly, it helps. Like, I've been taking notes of everything that people are posting, because those are the things that, my son's special needs. So I know he's struggling, and I know the issues that we're having. But sometimes, when we're doing stuff, we do forget, like, hey, let's check how is the county doing as an overall with the reading. And that is something that I've noticed, but it didn't register. So I think maybe we can do a countywide program. And maybe, as SCCPTA, and obviously we'd have to sit down and figure it out. But I know we have a lot of reading, like the little libraries popping up throughout our county. We have a lot of different things popping up, but maybe we can't, our kids need to read. That's essential. You have a visitor now. Our kids need to read. That's super essential. So I think that thank you for mentioning that. I think that that's something that we need to talk about as a group, and maybe we can do something countywide for all of our schools. And not just iReady, but finding ways to get parents involved where you make that time, you know, because you need buy-in. It's hard. You need the buy-in, and we need to hold our schools accountable for what our kids be learning.
Smart, Shelly. I think, you know, and Kelly and I had a lot of success with our membership challenge between Altamont and Castleberry last year. I think schools are competitive with one another. And I think if we did try to put something together countywide where you could pair up with another school and have some sort of reading competition between schools, you know, that would promote their school pride with their competition, you know, that may get kids engaged in trying to beat, you know, a nearby school with whatever it ends up looking like. But I think that's smart.
Yeah, there are readathons that we could try to work on. We're actually working on a different program, so maybe we can tie stuff in together. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And lastly, for those of you that are looking for some DEI, this link right here will actually take you to, it's a paid service, but they're very cheap. It's like 89 cents or something like that. And it has a bunch of different worksheets for different levels of school. Here, I can show it to you here. And then it's got like, so diversity, equity, inclusion worksheets there. And it has a bunch of different worksheets in order to engage students, in order to engage parents, just give you some ideas. If you're anything like me, you can take a look at it and kind of tweak it to make it your own and not actually have to purchase it. And you can do wondrous things with Google Docs if you wanted to kind of take this and use it as a little bit of a roadmap to figure out how you want to create your own. They also have them available in fillable format and Spanish translated worksheets as well. We're gonna go back here. And so that will conclude my presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know we kind of been asking questions as the presentation has been going on, but if there's anybody that I may have missed or any other questions, let me jump in the chat box here. High school students can translate our forms for volunteer hours. I think regarding form translation, great idea. Very, very, very great idea. But first, I think using the mapping tool to understand what the population in your school looks like, to understand what languages you would need to translate the forms in. A lot of places will automatically default to English and Spanish, but sometimes you have other populations that exist in your school that may not be a huge majority, but they are a large minority, and they don't get the same access. Shame on me, because whenever I do my board meetings, there's a young lady that always does she signs for our meetings, and we record them so that way anybody that's unable to attend, we can still play it back for them. And if they have, if they're hard of hearing, then they can read her signing. So are there
Tristan, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you're a school that doesn't have a DEI chair and you want to advertise for that position, make a post on your Facebook page, do you have something that we can share with them that would kind of define, you know, what DEI is, but in a brief like Facebook post, you know what I'm saying, that we could share and attach it to a Google form, you know, for people to say if they're interested in filling that role on a board, on a local unit board?
Absolutely. What I would, so yes, I do have a post that I've used, and I can share that with you. I thought I put my email address on here for those. No, I guess I didn't. Oops. But I'm gonna actually type it in the chat box. For those of you that are looking for any DEI support whatsoever, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be more than happy to help you. In the class that I'll be teaching later on today, there will be some resources that I will provide, and then also some ways to get other folks involved and to hopefully get a DEI chair at each school. If not, I don't have a problem working with the presidents, but I would really like to see that. For those of you that are here, something that I'm working on, that my budget was already approved, yay. But I'm working on trying to do a DEI grant. And there will be some more information to follow on how schools can do submissions in order to participate in this grant opportunity. But the idea is to keep everyone with a focus on DEI, and as a reward, there's a grant opportunity at the end of the year by submitting any DEI activities that you've done.